The death of a spouse is a traumatic experience, yet many widows continue to endure human rights violations, discrimination, stigma, sexual violations, and harmful cultural practices, including ukungenwa, a common practice of a woman being taken as a wife against her will by her husband's unmarried brother or cousin when the husband passes away. To highlight the challenges and vulnerabilities of widowhood, the Commission for Gender Equality will later this morning host a panel webinar on the impact of patriarchy on widows in South Africa. Now, to tell us more about what goes on or a widow goes through after losing their partners, we are joined by Awelani Madira from the Widow Foundation and Mbangiseni Dzivhani, who is the author of the book Widow's Room. Wonderful to have both of you. Thanks so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Leanne. Good morning.
As I was saying before,
to the viewers.
Thank you. You know, as we were saying before, this is such an important issue and one that I think gets very little attention, certainly on a mass scale like this. And I'm so glad we're spending time talking about it. And Mbangiseni, to begin with you, you wrote a book about this, and after your spouse passed away, you wanted to document your experiences of being a widow and what you went through and how tough it actually was. You managed to rebuild your life and get to the point that you are now. But perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your journey of what it was like when you became a widow.
Thank you, Leanne, and to the viewers. In the journey of my personal experience with widowhood, Leanne, I survived the most worst and gross violation of my rights as a young widow with a 1-month-old baby and having recovered from a cesarean section. I was isolated by stigma, myth, and cultural prejudices. Specifically, 2 types of stigmas were attached to me, Leanne. First, as a woman who lost her husband, in some instances, it is regarded as shame. I was no longer accorded the dignity or the respect I had before the passing away of my husband. I started isolating myself. My esteem just dropped. My confidence was depleted. The second type of stigma is the social stigma, Leanne, where in any social setting, be it church, family gatherings, circle of my peers and my friends, married women started to be uneasy with me by the virtue that I am a widow. I was looked down upon. I was no longer part of the family gatherings where decisions were made. Instead, I will be informed of decisions made on myself. For an example, in my book, I shared with the audience, a day after the death of my husband, Leanne, a decision was made by the parents that I travel to his homestead where the burial will take place. I was never consulted. So the decision was imposed on me. I also suffered torment, Leanne. The death of my husband has left me and my 2 daughters in torment. I experienced several mental and physical suffering. I was forced to leave my house where we stayed with my late husband without saying goodbye to my 9-year-old daughter. It was regarded a taboo to tell her about the death of her father. And on my way to the imposed burial place at his parents' place, I was taken to the mortuary unaware to have the so-called the viewing of the body. Again, I was not consulted, Leanne. I was not physically and mentally ready for that. It was too soon. I also suffered gross cruelty, where elderly women willfully and afflicted gruesome pain in me with no feeling of concern about their actions. In the name of culture, Leanne, I was forced to walk for about 5 kilometers down the riverside for so-called cleansing rituals in the name of culture. I felt very helpless, powerless, and dismayed, surrounded by 8 elderly widows whom I've never seen before.
Yeah.
I was stripped naked there by the riverside. My hair was shaved. My private parts were cut with a razor blade. A practice called female genital mutilation, which is not reported in South Africa, specifically in the deep rural areas. It is happening. I lived it.
My God.
A chicken was slaughtered in front of me by the riverside. Its blood was poured in a basin where they've mixed the pieces of my cat labia, my hair, and they mixed it with a concoction of mixed herbs. I was made to bath in that terrible smelling concoction from head to toe. And at the end of these cleansing rituals, I was sworn in deep secrecy, Leanne, not to tell anyone about the rituals, including my own mother. Sadly, this is the secret that I kept for 33 years. According to the culture, the cleansing ritual was to render myself clean and to dispel my late husband's spirit, that I was ready to be married by any other appointed member of the family after 12 months. And in these 12 months, I was forced to put on black mourning attire as a sign of grief. I also suffered violation of my rights as a widow. The right
All right, looks like we're having a bit of issues.
to decision making. Choose.
Yeah.
The
Mbangiseni, I'm just gonna pause you there just to see if we can get some of your
right
Let
to
me-
access to.
Mbangiseni, just if you can hear me, just hold on 1 second. It seems that your signal is just breaking up a bit, but I think what you've already told us has certainly myself. I mean, I've just been almost traumatized by listening to the story that you went through, not to mention what you yourself are trying to get over here. I mean, this is just a lot that you have told us, and that's where I want to bring Awelani into the conversation now, because you know things like this and the fact that this is happening, and this is a personal experience of somebody who, by the way, we'll get to this in a short while, actually worked for government and worked in the department that's in charge of women. So I'm going to get to that in a second. But I want to speak to you a little bit, Awelani, about, you know, global studies are showing that South Africa is one of the countries that have the highest gender-based violence. Why is this associated with a stigma and a taboo with relation to becoming a widow? Where are we going wrong here? Awelani, are you able to hear me? Right, looks like we may have lost Awelani as well. Well, let me hope. Mbangiseni, are you able to hear me? Let me try and bring you back into the conversation.
Yes, I can hear you,
Good.
Leanne.
All right, I've got you. It looks like, unfortunately, the picture is frozen with Awelani there. But for you, why would you say, I mean, you spent time in government. Where have we gone wrong? What has happened that all these years down, this is what we're going through?
I think the main issue here, Leanne, is that the issue of widowhood, especially the women widows, the plight of widowhood, it's shelved somewhere else. It is not mainstreamed in the government projects or government programs. It is overshadowed by the concept, the pandemic of gender-based violence. If I can give you an example, throughout the August month, the Women's Month, this is the first time or the second time where we're talking about widows' issues. There's no platforms, no dialogue platforms for widowed women to view, to air their views. There's no budget specifically put aside, no shelters for widowed women. We do have shelters for other related gender-based violence. So it is time that the government put aside and mainstream widowhood, plight, into government projects and government programs.
Yeah. Now, I asked this question to you, and I'm glad I'm speaking to you, because we keep on turning to government for this and asking why they don't put it on the top of the agenda. Now, when I read your profile, one would think that you could have been an individual that could have come in and made so many changes and really put this at the top of agendas. I mean, you served in the presidency as a director in the Spousal Support Office from 2005 until 2008. Then you were the chief director in the Ministry of Women, Children and People with Disability in 2008 to 2012, amongst a lot of huge issues. Now, how is it that we're sitting here in 2021 still talking about an issue that should not even exist? But you were in this government, this very government that we're lamenting right now. Tell me why, when you're in, you can't even make changes.
I did. Slight changes.
This signal is really getting us down in this interview today. It really is. Let me try.
If you look at my profile, drafting of the gender profile. I can hear you, Leah.
Yeah, we're struggling to hear you. That's the problem. Unfortunately, it just your sound keeps on breaking. Let me try one. Let me give you the opportunity one more time just to answer the question. And if I struggle, I will intervene.
Yeah. I was saying I did make a lot of changes. The only thing with regard to the issue of widowhood is that this is a very controversial issue. It is not reported. It is not documented anywhere. Little research has been conducted on the issue of widowhood, and due to the stigma, and due to the victimization, due to the secrecy that I was shown in, I felt very helpless just to raise the issue of widowhood. But I worked tirelessly in regard to promoting gender equality, fighting gender-based violence, raising awareness. But I could not raise this issue because I didn't have the capacity by then.
Yeah.
I didn't have the capacity, Leanne. But for now, that is why I'm standing up and saying I'm breaking this silence.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Awelani, I'm hoping you can hear us, because this story that we're hearing from Mbangiseni has really, it's left a lot of people shocked, including myself, thinking that, this is happening and this is practiced. There are many violations that are done in the name of tradition and culture, but this is humiliating. This is dehumanizing in every sense of the word. How is it possible that these violations are allowed to continue at the hands of their spouses' families?
Leanne, this is quite a complicated experience, as you have heard earlier. And one of the main things that has actually made us to stand up is based on the fact that those experiences that she suffered long back, we were looking at them as children. We were observing. And we came to a point where we said, this must stop. We cannot have widows that go through all these experiences and raise children that hate their paternal families. Children need both families to grow up in a healthy environment. And because of that, we then decided that we are going to have to establish an initiative, an organization that will ensure that the needs of the widows are heard, but not only heard, but also the widows and their children and their families are supported in how to handle and how to deal with all these challenges that they go through. You cannot go through the experiences that you've just had and live a normal, healthy life. You need more support system. You need more psychosocial services. You need more information on how to claim for deceased estate. You need peace of mind. Instead of mourning, you are then on a fighting mode, because you ask yourself, did this family really accepted me, appreciated me as part of their family? So Widowhood Foundation was established to address those adversity, to ensure that the little that we can reach, we are able to make their life better. We are able to educate them. But in educating them, we also educate the community, because the community close eyes when they see these adversities, these challenges, this discrimination, these injustices happening. So we had decided that we're not only educating the widows, but we educate the communities. We support the children. We give all the necessary support that is needed to ensure that we address the plight of widows.
What about ukungenwa? I mean, it's still practiced by some cultures. We mentioned it a bit earlier in the introduction. Ukungenwa, the whole practice of a woman being taken as a wife against her will by her husband's unmarried brother or cousin when the husband passes. I mean, how much does this practice still happen? And certainly, I mean, again, I use the word dehumanize a widow who is still dealing with the loss of her husband and has to go through this.
Well, I believe that what actually contributes to that practice is mainly because of the estate that is left by the late husband. The family feels that it must not go out. If the widow is allowed to live their life, then it means somebody else is going to benefit. Rather, the wealth must stay within the family. However, at this point in our lives, it actually is more prevalent in the rural areas. Women in these days are standing up for themselves. I'm sure you have seen widows speaking in their husband's funeral, which were not actually a normal practice. So we are slowly making changes. We are slowly contributing to more changes in our society.
Yeah. You know, just ladies, we run out of time, and such an important issue, and I know we need to speak about it more because, you know, women and families feel very disempowered when this does happen. And, you know, the legalities are also a big problem, and we've got such tight and strict restrictions around marriage laws in South Africa, and yet when you look at culture and tradition, seems to disregard law, and it's a conversation we've been having for some time. I'm going to invite you back. I've got no time at the moment, unfortunately, to continue this conversation, but it was a good starting point. Awelani Madira is from the Widowhood Foundation, and Mbangiseni Dzivhani is an author of the book The Widow, talking to us about the plight of widows in the country.